The verse gives us a hint at what Matthew later states plainly, that Jesus was born to a virgin named Mary. And that's all important. And when you look at all this thing, there's 14 generations, and another 14 generations. And when you look at this, I want you to remember this as we're wrapping up today, is that God always has a plan. As you go from the book of Genesis right through, there's the red road of redemption that you can see, that God had a plan through all these individuals working in their lives, because his plan was to bring Messiah so that he would save people from their sin. But when they look at it, what line does it come from? The royal line of David. That's his kingship. If you study these names in details, we glance over, it's almost as God pulled together what I call a rogues gallery. I already said we don't know everything about every person on this list. But the ones that we really know about, all of them had moral failures and on their spiritual resumes, really. For instance, we didn't mention this, but Abraham lied about his wife Sarah, saying she was his sister. It was actually a half-truth. She was his half-sister. Isaac did the same thing with Rebekah, lied. Jacob was a swindler and a cheater. Really. Judah was a fornicator. David was an adulterer and murderer. Solomon was a polygamist. Manasseh was the most evil king Israel ever had. And on we could go. Not what you call plaster saints. Far from it. Some weren't really saints at all. The best of these men had flaws, and some were so flawed that it's impossible to see their good points. What does that show us about the grace of God? It shows us that the grace of God, because people like this make up Jesus' family tree. A murderer's on the list. I said a fornicator's on the list. An adulterer's on the list. A liar's on the list. They're all on the list. Think about that. Most of these men and women were very great sinners. But God said, I can still work through that. And as we look at the forgotten family tree, I see three types of people hanging from the branches here. The faithful, the failures, and the forgotten. I hope you won't skip Matthew 1 when you read this passage of Scripture. The unlikely list of unlikely people may be the greatest chapter on the grace of God in Scripture, where you say, what did God do through all that? His plan, in spite of what these people lived and how they walked and what they did, God worked through every situation. Here's a challenge. Is there a situation in your family or in your life you say, I don't think God can work through this? Guess what? He can. He can. Our God is greater and able to do that.